There are a number of factors that immediately set Lindberg apart. Firstly, a dialect that the rest of the country finds very hard to understand. Secondly, you'll see shrines and crosses everywhere, because this is a Catholic region. And thirdly, of course, there are hills. Yes, genuine hills in the Netherlands.
Limburg is located in the far southeast of the Netherlands. Indeed, the southern half of Limburg is almost completely surrounded by Belgium and Germany, a fact that has shaped its destiny. The curious borders are a result of the partition of Greater Limburg between the Netherlands and Belgium by the Treaty of London back in 1839. Here, everyday life is directly affected by borders. Later, I'll be visiting the capital Maastricht, but first, I travel east.
Now, there are a number of curious facts about the town of Vaals. On a map, it looks more like a suburb of the neighbouring German city of Aachen. Indeed, many of its residents actually work in Germany. In fact, a quarter of its residents are German. Vaals has also won a major award, and not just because it's got great cafe bakeries.
Cittaslow is the international mark of accreditation for municipalities that provide the highest quality living environment, local produce, hospitality, natural environment, infrastructure, cultural history and identity preservation. And Vaals is part of that club.
Although a point where three countries meet is quite a common occurrence in Europe, it still usually means that it'll turn into a tourist attraction, and that is no different here on the border between the Netherlands, Belgium and Germany. Although there is the added attraction that you're standing on the highest point in the Netherlands, and you've actually had to come up one switchback, which for this country is quite remarkable. We won't see much on a misty October morning, but it's still fun. Netherlands, Belgium, Germany,
the three-country point sits at the peak of Valserberg, the Dutch Mont Blanc, at all of 322.5 metres. From here, you can join the network of well-marked hiking routes that take you across the hills of South Limburg and through its attractive villages. You'll need to hike to wear off the Limburgse fly. This delicious pastry is ubiquitous and comes in a tempting variety of flavours. I'm sure there's a competition somewhere, and I hereby volunteer my services as a judge.
Borders have always fascinated me, which is why I've come here. Looks like a regular street, but it's not. One side is the Netherlands, the other side is Germany. Where I'm standing, I have one foot in each country. So how did that come to be?
Well, Kerkrade is the western half of a divided city. Until 1795, the city was part of the Austrian Netherlands. And from 1795 to 1815, it was part of the French Empire. In 1815, the Congress of Vienna divided the town into the Dutch Kerkrade and the Prussian Herzogenrath. Prussia became Germany, and this street was divided by a wall until the hard border came down. The Eurode Business Centre deliberately sits right across the border at the end of the street, a positive sign of the times. As a result of widespread mining, this northeastern corner of South Limburg is heavily urbanised, although the various towns are collectively known as the Park City. The mines have long gone, but there is one corner of Kerkrade that is green and thriving.
The Botanical Gardens in Kerkrade were founded in 1939. The city has now grown all around them, but they are still a haven of peace, particularly here in the Madagascar greenhouse.
In an industrial area, the garden was deliberately designed by John Bergmans as a place for education, exhibition and recreation. There are open and closed garden areas and a selection of deciduous trees and flowering shrubs, mainly from temperate zones. As well as the Madagascar collection, the gardens are particularly proud of the magnificent conifers that have towered into the air over the past 85 years.
Given that we're surrounded by a housing estate, I did not expect to see a red squirrel here.
In the western sector of the Parkstad, past the enormous murals of the town of Heerlen, you can find one of the Netherlands' favourite castles.
Still within the boundaries of the enormous Parkstad and amongst all the buildings of the 20th century, you'll find what the Dutch call a water castle, and it is one of the finest castles in the Netherlands. This is Hoensbroek Castle, home to the Lords of Hoensbroek, right up until the French Revolution.
Location was key for this castle, located along important trade routes to Maastricht, Aachen and Cologne. It expanded in several phases, becoming the largest stronghold between the Meuse and the Rhine rivers, with no less than 67 halls, rooms and living quarters. The castle was the ancestral home of the Knights Hearn van der Broek for nearly 6 centuries, before falling into decay at the end of the 18th century. Since the 1980s, it's been an informative and fun visitor attraction.
A castle with a moat is the norm in the Netherlands, but what's far less common is a hilltop castle. In fact, there is only one in the whole country, and it's here just a few miles away in Valkenburg.
Beneath the castle you'll find caves, as well as the greatest concentration of restaurants in the whole of Limburg. For a quieter experience, head north to the curious little village of Thorn. Known for its white buildings, the real surprise here is that this was once a tiny independent state, allied to the Holy Roman Empire. The large abbey church is the legacy of 800 years of rule by fiercely independent canonesses and the Princess Abbess. The state had its own jurisdiction, minted its own currency, and of course, one of the most impressive churches in the region. The most popular restaurant in the village by far is the Pancake Baker. You only have, say, 300 different pancakes to choose from.
In 1797, the French invaded, and that was the end for the sovereign abbess and for centuries of the independent state of Thorn.
Without the French intervention, well, who knows, there might still be a mini-state of less than 30 square kilometres on the Dutch-Belgian border. That would have been fun. But history had other ideas for Lindberg, especially in the 1940s.
High on a hill outside Maastricht is a corner of Limburg that will forever be American.
The Netherlands American Cemetery and Memorial is the only American war cemetery in the country. As the war came to an end, it was determined that any American war dead within 600 kilometres would be brought here, and no Americans were to be left behind the former enemy lines. There are over 8,000 graves here, a monument to the enormous sacrifice to liberate Europe from Nazi Germany.
Now, outside of the Netherlands, few people have heard of Limburg, but most people do recognise the name of its capital, Maastricht.
Maastricht itself has always been coveted due to its strategic location, and it would take me 10 minutes to list all of the different sieges that it has suffered over the years.
From the centre of Maastricht, it's a 5-minute drive to Belgium and a 20-minute drive to Germany. It was the removal of the hard borders and the various currencies that was the key to this city's prosperity and development. For the signing of a treaty that would bring into being the European Union, this was the perfect location. The rejuvenation of Maastricht is best expressed in the new district of Ceramiek, where an old industrial quarter has been transformed into a playground for architects.
Ceramiek is a residential area on the east bank of the Maas, developed from the 1990s and 2000s on the grounds of the former pottery factory Société Ceramique. Many renowned architects have been involved, creating a counterpoint to the narrow streets and medieval buildings across the river. If you bought land here in the 1970s and 80s, then you'll be counting the euros from your penthouse suite and enjoying the city's finest restaurants.
At the heart of Ceramiek is the 1992 square, named of course after the year of the Maastricht Treaty. But Maastricht is not just about the modern. In the Netherlands, only Amsterdam has more registered historic buildings.
The crowning glory is the Roman Catholic Basilica of Our Lady. Dating from the 12th century, it suffered from the numerous sieges but has been left in peace since refurbishment in the early 20th century. The historic buildings of Maastricht's core are now used for commerce, business and education. 60% of the students at Maastricht University are from overseas, and half the degree courses are available in English. And if you want books for your course, well, you've come to the right place.
Maastricht has a bookshop that is situated inside an old Dominican church and has been voted as one of the most beautiful bookshops in the world. Good morning, it's another beautiful day in Lindberg.
Sadly, I'm leaving today, but I have really enjoyed taking a slice out of this curious Dutch province, where a wrong turning can immediately take you into a different country. The locals are friendly and the hills are gentle. No wonder the Dutch come here to unwind.